Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a tricky but important topic for the digital SAT, subject modifier placement questions. If you have ever struggled with sentences that sound awkward or confusing because the modifier seems to be in the wrong place, you're not alone. Many students get tripped up by misplaced or dangling modifiers, where it is unclear what the modifier is describing or the sentence just doesn't make sense. But don't worry, in this video I'm going to show you a simple way to spot misplaced modifiers and make sure they're correctly placed next to the word or phrase they are modifying. We will break down common errors and give you tips to make sure every sentence is crystal clear. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to avoid the mistakes that trip up so many students. Let's jump right in and start mastering those subject modifier placement questions. Let's first of all understand what are these dangling modifiers. When it comes to the dangling modifiers, they are basically some introductory phrases. They introduce a particular sentence that comes before the main part of the sentence. So this dangling modifier happens when the word or words it is modifying is away from it or is even missing in the entire sentence. If you don't get it, it's okay. We'll take up a few examples to show you how to understand what a dangling modifier is and what are the common question types, what are the common modifier question types that you'll be coming across when it comes to the digital SAT. Now let's look at the first sentence. While watching the movie, comma, the doorbell rang. Now, okay, what is the first part of the sentence doing? It's introducing a sentence, right? While watching the movie, something happened. Now, tell me one thing. Do we know from this sentence who was watching the movie? We don't know. We have no clue because the sentence has not mentioned it anywhere who was watching the movie. And that's pretty crucial for the sentence because that's the subject of the sentence. Where do I want the subject to be placed? I want it to be placed immediately after the comma. Now remember this thing as a rule. Whenever you get the underlined portion in the text or maybe a blank space in the text right after the comma, it's most probably a modifier question. It's most probably asking you to place the subject of the sentence right after the comma. In that case, what do I need to do? I need to read back. I need to go to the part of the sentence which is before the comma and understand what is this happening, right? Like in this case it says while watching the movie, so I know somebody is watching the movie. The second thing I'll do is I'll check if that subject or some person who's watching the movie, is that subject being placed right after the comma or not. Now in this case I have the doorbell. Now clearly a doorbell can't really watch a movie. It has to be a human who's watching some movie. This is how you can figure out if you are facing or if you have a modifier question or not. You simply have to check if the part underlined or the blank space is immediately after the comma or not. If it is, then you will have to read before whatever is given before the comma to understand if the subject is mentioned or not. If it's not mentioned, then you have to identify who is doing this activity, who is doing this act of watching the movie, and that needs to be placed right after the comma. This is one way of correcting the error in this sentence. The other way would be that you mention the subject itself in the first part of the sentence, that is before the comma. For example, while I was watching the movie, comma. Now in this case, I know who was watching the movie. The subject is right here. In this case, I don't really need to place the subject again right after the comma. Now the sentence that the correction that I was referring to, let's look at a correction on that. While watching the movie, comma, I was interrupted by the doorbell. Now it's clear who was watching the movie, that was I. So two ways you can correct this error. One way is that you insert the subject in the first part of the sentence, that is before the comma. The second way to correct this mistake is that you place the subject right after the comma, if that's missing in the first part of the sentence. Let's look at more examples. Hiking through the mountains, comma, the birds. Now stop here. Can the birds go hiking? It's illogical to say that the birds go hiking, which means this is an incorrect sentence. But how do I correct this? Either I will place the subject before the comma, that is while I was hiking through the mountains. Now I know who was hiking now I know who was hiking through the mountains, and then you can keep the rest of the part similar as it was, same to what it was. The second way is hiking to the mountains, comma, I listened. Now this tells me that I was hiking through the mountains. The subject is placed right after the comma. Another sentence, after finishing the book, comma, the movie. Now tell me one thing, can the movie finish a book? It doesn't make sense. It's completely illogical. How do I correct this? Again, I will place the subject, either I will place the subject before the comma, that is the part of the sentence that is before the comma, or I will place the subject immediately after the comma. Look at the correction. After I finished the book. So it tells me who finished the book and then the rest of the part remains the same. Or after finishing the book, comma, I. Now it tells me who finished the book, that is I. Another example, running down the street, my hat blew off. Now, can a hat run down the street? No, it's illogical. So, again, look at the correction. As I was running down the street. So, who was running? It's been mentioned here itself. And then the rest of the part remains the same. Running down the street, comma, I. Now, here we have the subject right after the comma. It tells me clearly who was running down the street. That was I. Next sentence, to avoid traffic, comma, the highway. Can a highway avoid traffic? No. Somebody is driving, right? Somebody is driving and that person is avoiding the traffic. Which means, how can I correct this? To avoid traffic, comma, the driver took the highway. Now I know who is avoiding the traffic. Or I can say to avoid traffic, I took the highway. Right? Again, this also tells me that I was trying to avoid the traffic or the driver was trying to avoid the traffic. The subject is placed immediately after the comma. Next sentence, while eating lunch, comma, the cat jumped onto the table. Now, who is eating the lunch? Is it the cat who is eating the lunch? It's illogical to say that. How do I correct this? I place the subject in the part before the comma, while I was eating lunch, comma, the cat jumped onto the table. Or I would say eating lunch, comma, I watched. I am eating the lunch. Now, guys, this is how you can correct all the mistakes when it comes to subject, comma, modifier placement, or when it comes to a modifier question. That's all for now. Thank you so much.